For our A2 Media Studies coursework, we had to make a short film and 2 support products for this film. And when creating a film, a short film, obviously, you've got to consider codes and conventions that help you design sort of the film and make sure it's correct for the audience. And in class and in spare time, we have watched short films. In class, I've been watching the films that are more general, whereas in my spare time I've watched ones that are specific to my genre, which I will discuss in my ideas video blog. And well, the thing is, with the ones I've watched in class, there are a wide range of genres, so it shows you can do almost any genre of a short film. We've seen romantic ones, action ones, animations, sport ones, and it is harder for some genres to sort of fit into the short film group, should we say, because if you've got like a mystery genre, it's going to be hard to get it into a short little film because there's so much to cover. So it's probably better to go for one of the more action based films that you can easily pick up and sort of enjoy without having to concentrate too much. And more simple films generally are much easier to follow, of course, and an example of this is the film 3x3, which is a basketball film. It's so easy to follow, there's no dialogue, and it's just so simple, but it's so effective at the same time. But there are some complex short films. For example, one of the ones we watched in class was on the Pasta Media YouTube channel called De Schopfer. That is very complex, but it does work because of the stuff that's inside the actual, that's the content that's in the film. It's because it's easy. It's a bit longer than the others, and it's a lot more support. It's basically more like a sort of episode of a TV series you see on TV. It's not really like a short film, but it is short, so you'd consider it in that sort of group. So start with codes and conventions. You normally see 2 or 3 main characters in a short film. You might see a few extras, but generally it says 2 to 3 main characters, because if you've got more than that, if you've got a lot of main characters, you're just gonna, say if your film's like 5 minutes, you aren't gonna follow it because there's just, let's have 10 main characters in the same matter of minutes, and you're not going to be able to follow who's who. But 2 or 3 in a 5-minute film is easy because you've got a couple of minutes to establish each character, and if you've got loads, then it's just going to really confuse people, and there's not enough time for the audience to get to know them really. That's why you only need to stick to a couple of characters. There are also normally only 1 to 2 locations because it's much easier to follow if you've only got a couple of places they're going. If you've got like 10 different scenes, locations, you're going to just forget where they all are because it's only a short film. You don't need all these complex locations. That isn't needed to make it effective. And for example, all the ones we saw only had a couple of locations. 3x3 had 1 location to shop for. Yeah, that was a bit more complex. It had numerous locations, but as I said earlier, it was easy to follow because of the content in the film. There was a black hole film too that had 1 location, and there was also one called Sorry I'm Late, which is an animation film. It's only 1 location, but it's animated, so it's kind of harder to explain, but it's just 1 scene of different moving objects trying to impede the person somewhere is late, but it's still in the 1 set place. If you're getting at that, generally they're only 5 to 10 minutes long because it is a short film. Because if it's longer, you start to consider it as less of a short film maybe, because always when you go into the cinema, you're always only if it's a short film before the actual film, the short film beforehand will always be like 4 minutes, 5 minutes long, and anything longer than 10 minutes, you might start to consider it as an actual film. But short films you watch in class and my spare time are only a few minutes long. However, a film classing is like 4 or 5. Der Schöpfer, I was on about that earlier, the more complex film, did go on for around 9 minutes, but it needed to go on for that long to get the points across, so you could actually understand it fully. Also, there's often twists in short films. This is because of a short film there's less, should we say, action going on. So to make it more effective and exciting, you can only do the twist that makes it worthwhile to watch the actual film. Because often with short films, there's little time to actually make a whole big sort of plot line. So by having a short twist, it just makes it worth the watch. In every film we watched, there was some sort of twist. In The Black Hole, there was a twist where you think there's this bit of paper and there's a black circle, and he's able to go through the actual circle, and you think he's like invincible almost, but then he gets stuck inside a like object and he can't get out. That's the twist, because you think he's gonna like do loads of amazing stuff, but actually makes a fool of himself. In the 3x3 film, you think the guy's going to be awful at basketball, but there's an amazing shot. In Der Schöpfer, you think the girl thinks her granddad is like really bad, but then it turns out that granddad was a really good person. And then in the Sorry I'm Late film, it's more less of a twist because it's animation, but still it's kind of a twist because you don't expect what's coming up next. So like, with all these objects that impede him on his way to his home, it's hard to expect what's going to come next, and there are twists are vital in short films. It's also vital that it should be over a short period of time. If you've got like 10 months later, it's just confusing things. You want it to happen in one place, because that way it makes more sense. If it's just one time that's going on, it makes more sense. There's less changes happening, it's just one thing there, and that is a way of making it simple, but there are other ways too. There's little dialogue in short films, because normally you can put the points across in actual imagery. Only a couple of films we actually watched in class used dialogue. In the 3x3 there was no dialogue or speech whatsoever. This is because there was no need for it, because the imagery was so good. You only needed to see that to know what's going on. Der Schöpfer needed speech only to put the points across that you couldn't pick up. For example, when the girl was talking to Granda's old friend, you couldn't notice that without the actual speech, so that's why it was used. Sorry I'm Late one, there was no talking apart from the bit at the end, which was just mother saying what's all the excuses, and that is used because it's only needed there to show that she doesn't believe what's happened. That's why there was no speech coming up to that. And finally, the Black Hole one, there was no speech in that because it was just, you could see what was going on. It's so easy to follow it without any speech. And also, the way of talking is put across using the classic realist narrative structure. So you've got the equilibrium, the disequilibrium, and a new equilibrium. Basically, it starts off with normal dialogue, normal flow, and then the dialogue it loses its way. It may be silent, there may be no dialogue whatsoever, and then it returns in a new form. For example, in Der Schöpfer, the dialogue was sort of broken when she was sort of intrigued about her granddad, and it returned when she realised her granddad was actually better than she thought in the first place. So that's the new equilibrium bit at the end. And finally, the last coding convention really is that in short films you often have a low budget. This low budget really helps when making your short film, because obviously you don't want to have a lot of money when you've only got a couple of locations. You don't want to be spending a lot of money when you've only got a couple of locations and a couple of characters. Obviously you have little amount of props, little amount of costumes, And this really helps because, of course, with a short film you don't want to be spending your time like making the film, and you've got to actually edit and put it together. So we're having a low budget, you don't want to be considering a lot of props. So that's the code and convention really, that you got to like minimise your costs and make sure you aren't, say, using a lot of budget, because that will make it break a lot of the rules in the short film. Potentially you'll be making it more complex than it needs to be, and with a short effective film you don't need all this, you don't need to be using a lot of your budget, and so that's the final code of convention really. So finally, rules can be broken, you don't have to follow the rules. In my own film I plan to break some of these rules, but not because I want to, because I have to go the idea I'm going with, which will be explained in the next video blog. So I am going to do a sport film, but because of the type of sport film I've used, it needs more characters than 2 to 3. It needs, I'd probably say, that there will be 2 locations. But apart from that, I'm sticking to the rules mainly. It's just about the characters, but that needs to be done to make the film effective.